I am Auntie Anne Hackett, Kristen and Rich's aunt, Caroline and Liam's great aunt. I was born in 1939, and I'm going to tell a story about when I was 9 years old. When I was 9 years old, my younger brother Jim was a baby. He couldn't walk. I also had a really pretty little kitten. And in our kitchen, as in those days, there was a range.
And what house were you living in?
I was living at 29 Chester Street.
This very house?
In Melford, this very house. And we had a kitchen stove that had attached to it a tank, that the tank was a hot water heater. The stove and the tank were fueled by gas. Our kitchen is very close, only a driveway away from the house next door. And our water tank burst. And of course the gas went everywhere. Unfortunately, the stove was on the inside wall, so the flames went out the window to the house next door and went straight up through the ceiling to our second floor. We had our grandmother, Bertha Rao Gilfeather, my mother's mother, living with us. And Nana was in a wheelchair. So to get her out of the house, my mother and one of our neighbors, Mrs. Lewis, had to carry her. Kathy was, of course, not yet 5, and as I said, Jimmy was the baby. So I had to take the baby. But I also had a precious little black kitten, and I couldn't take them both. So I chose to pluck Jim out of the walker he was in and take him out of the burning house and leave my kitten behind. Mrs. Lewis, being the kind person that she was when I was worried about the little kitten, told me she saw the kitten going out the back door. Of course, she would have to have divine assistance to see through the house to see the kitten going out the back door. So we got everyone out of the house. No one was hurt. And we made the front pages of all of the Boston papers because, of course, Jim was still alive. But I am now not so sure about my kitten. And I'm wondering if I made the wise choice, given future developments. The kitten would have probably been easier to live with. Now, shall I carry on with the story of this fire and tell Kathy's story? My sister Kathy was little, of course, and we shared a room. We actually shared a bed, and our room was right above the kitchen. So when we came in to look through the house after the fire was put out, in our bedroom the floor was missing and the bed was hanging half down through the kitchen ceiling. We went to live with my Auntie Alice and Uncle Fred in Malden for 4 or 5 months while the house was being rehabbed so we could move back in. In those days, beds had slats and a spring that rested on the slats and then the mattress. So Kathy and I went back the first night. Kathy, of course, did not want to go back into the house. She was afraid of it. We went back. We went to bed about 11 o'clock with all the tossing and turning. One of the slats came loose, and of course the spring dived down on, this isn't funny, but it is, dived down on Kathy's side of the bed, taking the mattress with it and taking Kathy with it. Of course, she thought that she was going to go right through the ceiling of the kitchen, and she got hysterical. It was very sad, but very funny. and she has never forgiven anyone involved. Two of the people involved, my parents have, of course, gone to God, so they're forgiven. But I will go to my grave with her remembering that I laughed at her when she thought she was going to come down through the ceiling. Mrs. Lewis, who lived across the street from us, was 93 when she died a few years ago. The house on Chester Street we moved into when I was 2 years old. Kathy and Jim were born not in the house, but in the local hospital, as was my nephew James. So all of that time, for 70 years, we lived across the street from Mrs. Lewis and her three girls, who, after the fire, collected clothes and toys, their own clothes and toys, so that Kathy and I would have something to wear and something to play with. In those days, if I were 9, it would be 1948. The neighbors were all very close. They helped us, as did our family, rehab the house. They took up a collection to get major appliances for us. And as I say, Mrs. Lewis took us under her wing. When she arrived in 1941, when I was 2, she brought with her Martha, which Martha, I love this whole thing because Martha was my first female friend. I was surrounded by brothers and by male cousins. And then Ginny was born a year ahead of Kathy, so Kathy got a friend too. And for the rest of our lives, the so-called Lewis girls and the Hackett girls remained fast friends.